Remember, 15s might be your wife, but 7s is your mistress.
This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? Thank you, much appreciated, and I had a great week. Maybe not picking, but I was at the beach, I was in a pool, it was fantastic. But you're not here for that. You're here for the Rugby Odds. And if you look in the sponsor opportunity green room, you're not going to be disappointed because John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE Hall of Fame return rugby advocate, is golfing. So Proxy Steve Lewis is in his place, along with King Gift Egbelu, the inventor of words. And they're looking at the Your Company name here slate, which is full and great. And also, we have George Hook calling in from Dublin. Gentlemen, a fun week in rugby, and it's great to see you. And Stephen, welcoming back you as well as John's proxy once again. John Bradshaw Layfield is golfing in Maine this time. So, you know.
Again, the perpetual proxy.
The perpetual proxy on the local channels near you coming this fall. Quickly, let's get right into it. Stephen, an observation, something that caught your eye this week in rugby?
I just thought you might want to be brought up to date with South American rugby, okay? The big game down there was obviously Scotland, with multiple new caps, putting Chile back in their box. At the same time, Argentina walloped Uruguay 79-5. Bit of a surprise. Kind of puts Chile and Uruguay's recent improvements back in perspective. Also, Brazil lost a tight one, lost to Hong Kong 26-25 with a muppet of a play at the end of the game. And Paraguay were much improved, losing to Belgium. So that's your South American update.
So the less informed out there that might not be looking at rosters and only look at results, how different was the Scotland team that beat Team USA in Washington, D.C. versus the one that just played in Chile?
Significantly different. The team that played the US on paper, much more experienced. Couple of things you could say there. I mean, the weather conditions were miserable that night, but you could also say that, when you got young players coming in who are looking to make a name for themselves, they're eager, they're keen, and they took their chance. Big difference for Scotland was Hastings coming on for Healy. His distribution in the second half just set them alight, and they scored at will, basically.
Okay. Gift.
Hey, man, this was a tough weekend for top picks for the MLR. Specifically, talking about New Orleans, man. An opportunity to really give the city a reason to fall in love with rugby as a professional side. And as unfortunate as the curse is for most professional sports in New Orleans, lost in the first round to a team that we were expected to beat and choked it away at the moments where it mattered most. Even if it was a close game for the majority of the game, it's what matters at the end, not what matters halfway through or even 2/3 of the way through.
But Gift, I'm going to go back to
home game.
Gift, I'm going to go back to you on this very show, on camera, when we all picked our top teams in the MLR. You had Chicago as the second best team in the league.
I did. And then they went into their slump. And I kind of assumed that they were still trying to figure out their process. And at the same time, New Orleans was supposed to be rising, and they were kind of finding their legs, finally kind of breaking some of the generational curse that they've had in their history. But as it goes, experience, you had a New York part of the team, the part of the LA original teams, part of the Atlanta teams. All of those are all championship teams. And, you saw it come into display in this game against New Orleans. And I think we'll continue to see that go as the conference championships move forward. The Chicago team decided to come together at the exact right moment. I can't take away from that one at all, but I'm really disappointed. I'm sad about New Orleans. Like, they really did have an opportunity to really sell the city on it. And it's going to take a little bit longer now. I mean, we did it with the Saints. We have to do it with the Gold, but God, dog. That it sucks, especially.
Hey, listen, Rome wasn't built in a day, and
but we're in 2024. We work in speed now.
All right. Well, I know that Miami fans and Anthem fans have to take some excitement out of that win for the Dallas Jackals in Houston. I mean, that is a huge story. The meteoric rise of the Dallas franchise, and who knows if they're even going to stay in Dallas. But that's for another show. But guys,
called that one though. By the way,
what's that?
Dallas was going to keep it close. They were definitely 100% going to cover. There was no doubt about that. That's a whole rivalry that's happening there, and Houston couldn't handle those breaks, man. They were falling out those last 3 weeks, and it showed all the way through. It's a team that didn't know how to win. They got too as they call it, above the poppy.
Well, and the broadcast booth in the second half said that the Sabercats looked gassed in their own backyard, right? And the more energy that the Dallas Jackals brought. Steve, before we go to a break and bring in George Hook, what did anything about that for you with Dallas and Houston?
I was surprised, but Houston played pretty predictable, form of rugby. And once you sort of work them out, you work them out. So it was a surprise. Credit to Dallas. I don't think they're particularly exciting either. I thought Chicago are sort of, they are in some ways mirroring what happened to New York in the championship year, where they had sort of coaching issues about 2/3 of the way through, very strong dressing room starting to take over and coming together at the right time. Chicago, as Gift pointed out, have that championship nucleus from other places. You got Fawcett, you got Paddy Ryan, you got O'Keefe, you got Ausberger, you got Tucker, you got a whole bunch of guys who are in New York, and then you've got the LA guys as well. So that group of players, that to me has underperformed all year, and I feel that they are hitting their stride at the right time.
There's that thing called continuity, Gift. Continuity. Remember that thing? Cohesion and continuity.
Well, we'll see what happens here.
All right. Now, Gift, we know that you have to go off and feed the twins, so we're going to say goodbye to you for a second and bring in George, but we'll come back with you after you do your feeding.
Sounds good, I guess. We'll do what we do.
We'll be right back with George Hook just after this.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we're back, and once again, we're welcoming in Mr. George Hook. George, welcome back to the Rugby Odds. George Hook, everybody. George Hook, there he is. That's him. That's him. George, before the enthusiasm dies down, let's get right into it. I know there's a couple of different topics that we want to talk about, but the first one is youth being served and the U20s. I know that you're a big fan and you have a lot to say.
Well, I mean, you've got to assume the under-20s or the under-25s or the under-26s of the next 5 or 6 years. So it should tell us something about where the game is going. And interestingly, what it's telling us is that Georgia, Italy, particularly, and Spain to a lesser degree, are performing extremely well. South Africa and Australia, not so well. And the Pacific nations, nowhere. So that's point one. England win against France, who've been champions for I don't know how long, on the basis that they were bigger. So what we are now looking at a game is a game that increasingly where big is beautiful. And England has the best scrum in the competition. And to be honest, that's why they won it. Ireland had the worst scrum of the top 4 teams, and that's why they lost it. The game now is all about size. And the scrum in particular is playing a disproportionate role in the game. And interestingly, Ireland, for whom I'm obviously very interested, have a lack of depth at prop forward. And now the under-20s have a lack of depth at prop forward. The reserve tight head, less than 12 months ago, was a back row forward. And they look at him and say, hello, you're big, fat and ugly, ergo, you're a tight head prop forward. Doesn't work like that. So the under-20s for me was very interesting. See Georgia get big wins, Italy big wins, Australia not so good. That's very important.
All right, so Stephen, that was a forwards perspective. You're a back. You're also a coaching expert. You're elevate-rugby.com site. People can go see you as an expert. What's your take on the U20 situation?
Yeah, well, as with everything George says, there is more than a kernel of truth. However, I don't think it's a straight indicator of what will happen at senior level in 4 or 5 years' time. Yes, what this is discussing is the funnel of talent and what's coming into it. But remember, there are only 15 people set foot on the field, or 23. So even though you've got a smaller gene pool and a smaller talent pool, it doesn't mean that Georgia or Italy will be beating Wales or Scotland necessarily. But in terms of trends about the game, absolutely on the England scrum, all about size. They're bigger than the national team scrum. But I don't think there's much also between the top of tier 2 and the bottom of tier 1. So your Spain, Fiji were bottom 2, Scotland, USA. They're all much of a muchness.
All right. And so, George, I'm going to flip the next two topics because it only makes sense to go organically into talking about Spain on the Rugby World stage in 15s. And you have been employed as in many coaching situations like Stephen, but you also worked for Team USA and for Spain. And Spain just supplanted Team USA in the 18th spot this weekend.
Yeah, I was technical advisor to the USA, to Spanish rugby in the late 80s. Now, Spanish rugby, the home of Spanish rugby is the Basque Country. In other words, the north of the country where there's a big French influence. Rugby has been played in Spain since the 19th century. So Spain's a huge history here, although it was about 1929 or thereabouts when it started playing international rugby. They qualified, don't forget, for the Rugby World Cup in 1999. Didn't do very well, but they qualified. So Spain has a great history here, and we shouldn't be surprised that it's doing pretty well. It's got a great history. Now, the Italians and the Georgians, if you look at the rankings at under 20, you've got Georgia, Italy, Spain in that order, and the South Pacific nations, nowhere. So I'm with Steve. Of course I'm with Steve. It's not a precursor to 5 years' time. But I tell you, I'm not sure that Georgia, Italy, and Spain aren't going to be dangerous in 4 or 5 years' time. The problem is that there's going to be no entry for Georgia and Spain into the Six Nations. So they're going to languish in Tier 2 rugby. So, we are, and I hesitate for even a second to cross swords with my Scottish friend, we are seeing a subtle change, I suggest.
Stephen, 30 seconds to piggyback that?
Yeah, I mean, by contrast, however, I point to those South American results where Chile were swatted aside by a sort of C team of Scotland, and then even more surprisingly, Uruguay 79 points to 5 by Argentina. Yeah. So there was almost more of the old order restoring itself in that part of the world. But I think it's fantastic, though. I mean, to be able to discuss Spain and Portugal and Uruguay and Chile. This is, if we really want it to be a global sport, this is what we need. We need these countries popping up, being competitive.
All right. Changing gears, and we're running out of time. But George, F. Scott Fitzgerald, the last line in The Great Gatsby, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. And Jay Gatsby, he could not recreate the past, and it ended tragically for him. Is that what's going on with Eddie Jones in Japan? Is this trying to repeat the past?
Eddie Jones has flattered to deceive for most of his coaching career. When the manure hit the fan in England, he skipped town. When the manure hit the fan in Australia, he skipped town. Now he's in Japan, who topped the pool just a mere 4 years ago in the Rugby World Cup, beating Ireland en route. Okay? And now he's succeeded in leading them downhill to losing against Georgia, no less. It's a very proud nation, Japan. This is Japan that was in the first Rugby World Cup of 87 when the USA beat them in the pool game. So, this does not sit well at all. So it's really a question, when is Jones going to find another job? before he gets sacked, would be my view. But just one last word for next week. We will be talking about the Olympics, I hope.
Indeed. And Stephen was going to bring that up in the next segment. But the good news out of this entire segment, George, before we let you go, is that it's just been announced that Irish Rugby Tours is going to sponsor Stephen and I moving to the Basque Country for Stephen to coach and for me to help be his broadcast partner. And, of course, we'll welcome you in. So thank you to Irish Rugby Tours. And thank you to Mr. George Hook, everybody. Thanks, George.
Thank you. God bless. God bless.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we're back, and we have Gift with us, Steve. And the first thing on our docket is the MLR quarterfinals. We've got New England, the Free Jacks at home, -3 versus Chicago. And we have Seattle at home, -4 versus the upstart Dallas Jackals. Steve, let's start with you, your pick, and then maybe if you have something for John.
Sure. Well, I'm going with Chicago. They're getting red hot or green hot at just the right time. New England have not been completely convincing. They're not in full flow as they were last year. I think Chicago will not only cover that, Chicago will win. They're coming right at the right time.
Yeah, look, man. Chicago is one of those teams that you don't want to be playing with in the playoffs. I do think that they're going to end up taking this one. New England really hasn't been great as a defending champion. I can't take away from that. Steven, you took all my words on this one, man. What can I say?
Obviously,
Chi-Town, baby.
As a New York sports person, like, I'm never rooting for New England. That's just bottom.
You know what? It's a very valid point you just brought up, and you got to think with your head on this show, because it is a gambling show, and we're supposed to predict these things as well as we can. Chicago is really gelling. Sam Harris, they must keep a poster of him in the locker room because they've been undefeated since they fired him, or he resigned, or whatever you want to call it. But New England just does enough to win all the time, and every time you underestimate New England, they go out and win. They're at home. They had a scare. They're coming out healthy. I think this is going to be a really rough physical match. I think Chicago's depth wins this in this one. And I wouldn't have said depth and Chicago earlier in the season, but right now I am. I think Chicago wins on the road.
John's pick on this one is...
Hey, it's the wrestling god JBL here again, and I got my sore throat. That's why I don't sound right. But slap my ass with jelly and burn me in an anthill. I like Chicago up in Quincy to beat those mass holes.
Oh my! Next, Starfire Stadium. Seattle survived a tough match with San Diego. That would probably see the end of the end of the road for Nanu and Gito, but. In the meantime, Seattle keeps going. Steve, who do you like there?
I like Seattle. I think at home, I think they've got a very solid, experienced squad. I think Dallas pulled it off once in the upset. I don't think they're pulling it off again. So I'm Seattle all the way.
Gift.
Hey, man, look, I got to give Dallas a lot of credit. One thing that you keep saying is very wrong is that they're the upstart. They've been in the league for like 2 years now. Like, their upstart status is long gone. They're experienced in at this point.
It's the second season.
It's like their third season. Dallas?
Is
it third season?
What? I don't even remember anymore, but it's still there. It's still a new team.
Barely. They're full infant mode. But that being said, they are starting to find their way. Like Steve said, is a team that is very, very experienced, and they know what it is to get to a championship game. Dallas is young and hungry, but I do think going up to the northwest is going to come back to bite them a little bit, come back to reality. That being said, I think Dallas covers, even if I believe Seattle wins.
Depending on the health of both teams, I know Oliver on that great try for Dallas that put the nail in the coffin. against the Sabercats. If he's hurt, because he looked like he was hurt in that try zone, that's a big factor. But going up to Starfire, Adrian Balfour is on MLR Weekly this week. I don't want to have him in my face.
Again?
Again. And
is he perpetual proxy as well?
Well, no, he's actually transparent and will speak his mind, which is great for this league. So
you have favorites. I don't know. It's almost like you have favorites.
Steve's mic has been muted, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to point that out. We don't accept insubordination here on the Rugby Odds.
Free Steve! Free the lizard!
All right, so now Gift's mic is muted as well. So I'm going to go with Seattle minus the 4 points. With Proxy Steve's mic off, I'll do his job, and here's what John had to say.
I got a sore throat, everybody. It's JBL, but I'm still thinking of you. And I like Dallas. Big D. Big Dallas. They got cowboy hats. I wear a cowboy hat. Yeah! Yippee, Dallas!
Moving right along to the Olympics. And for that, we have to turn their mics back on. So I'm going to unmute Stephen and Gift. They're on probation, however. And let's see what Stephen has to say about the Olympic sevens.
Well, unbeknownst to any of your regular viewers, the Olympic sevens is taking place this week in Paris, France. Now, once every 4 years, this is the biggest sporting event on the planet. Rugby's in it. So can we talk about it? Anyway, on the men's side, if we look at it from a purely American perspective, right? In sevens, the US is competitive, right? Both men and women. In sevens, you can get a little lucky. You can, punch above your weight. So that's why it's particularly interesting, I think, to an American audience. And it's also the entree vehicle for this sport in 2/3 of the world, be it the US, be it the Caribbean, be it Africa, wherever. So it really is important how this tournament goes. They're playing in the Stade de France, 82,000. Tickets are quite reasonable, $20 to $30. Apparently, they're selling really well. So the table is set. It's a spectacular event. On the men's side, I actually am going to go out on a limb. I think Fiji are going to reproduce their magic. They got Cherry Tupai back in. They've been better the last 2 tournaments of the year. Coaching change there. Golling's out. I think Fiji can recreate the magic. They come alive in the Olympics. This is their thing. It's the only Olympic medal they've ever won, and they've won it twice, and it's been gold. That's the men's side. Women's side, where I feel the American women have a real opportunity to medal. I think it might be bronze, it might be silver. I can't see anyone getting past New Zealand, Australia. It really depends how the seeding works out on day 2 and 3. So the pool games, obviously important to get through, but they kind of dictate what happens thereafter. If you can avoid Australia or New Zealand in the quarters, it could happen for us.
So to clarify, is this the same format as the HSBC sevens?
Yeah. So what happened this year is World Rugby, because it understands the importance of the Olympics, has decided that they're going to use the Olympic format all the way through. So that the format itself is very unpopular with players, very unpopular with coaches. However, that is the format. So essentially, the US made 6 of 7 quarterfinals this year, but couldn't make a semi, made 1 semi. So you could be 3-0 on day 1 in pool play. You lose the first game and you're out. So it's unforgiving. It's high stakes stuff. Players and coaches hate it, but neutrals probably love it.
Gift.
Yeah, look, man. And when we're talking about the pools that we have this year, I think this is probably the first time that I feel like there is actually a strong, various amount of possible gold medalists. I'll disagree with Steve on this one. I actually don't think Fiji is going to be in position to be able to get their 3rd gold in a row, despite the fact that they got Jerry Tupai back. A lot of people are underestimating a very young and very hungry Kenya team that I think for the first time is actually hungry to win and not hungry to just appear at the Olympics like I felt like they've been 2016 and 2020. And then from the women's side, this is literally anyone's game between the USA, France, Australia, and New Zealand are 1 and 2 respectively. And New Zealand is actually number 2 in that situation. Very odd situation to be in. And that also doesn't take away Great Britain on it. So much to go on. But I think this is probably the best that we're going to get for rugby to attract new audiences in and actually use it.
I'm gonna paint a broader stroke. Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Quick point. We don't have time to discuss every team, but you have to look at the hosts as well. France playing in their home stadium, with DuPont? Is that going to be the Cinderella story? Not the Cinderella story, but the fairy tale story of this Olympics.
Cinderella story.
Cinderella. The world's best player winning a sevens gold. How cool would that be?
That would be cool. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to paint the broad stroke here. I've got the men from Team USA finishing in the top 5, and I've got the women medaling. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
From New York City comes America's longest running and most popular rugby show. The biggest names in Major League Rugby, MLR highlights, and big match previews. Rugby Wrap-Up presents MLR Weekly, made in New York City.
Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. And we're back and we're almost done, but we still have some work to do before we let you go. First off, we have the NRL, then we have the Currie Cup, and then our picks of the week. Let's start with the NRL. Stephen.
Roosters. Roosters over John's Manly Sea Eagles.
Oh, that's going to rub his feathers in the wrong way.
That's why I picked them.
Yeah, look, man, taking the Broncos over the Bulldogs. Broncos try and get back to the championship again.
John's pick is...
Give me them there rabbitohs. You know, Fat Russell Crowe's rabbitohs. I like shooting rabbits. Making me some rabbit stew. Yeah!
Oh, my. All right, Warriors at home all day versus West Tigers. Now let's go to South Africa for the Currie Cup. Stephen.
My new favorite team since they bent the knee to Glasgow in the final of the URC, the Bulls. I'm taking the Bulls. They need a trophy.
And what about John Bradshaw Layfield?
He's going for the Griquas over the Pumas.
Ah, I thought it was the other way around, but what do I know? Gift.
I mean, what do you know? But I do know King of the Jungle always reigns over the territory. Look at the Golden Lions that continue to beat down over the Sharks.
And I've got the Cheetahs over the Griffins. And now it's time for John Bradshaw Layfield's favorite time of the show, Picks of the Week. Steve.
I'm going for Sammy Sullivan to be the top try scorer for the U.S. women's team.
Gift.
Hey, look for Argentina to silver in men's Olympic rugby sevens first time.
Is that happening this week?
Yeah, you know, I think there might be. I think there might be a tournament. You know, some people don't think it's important though.
Gift has been muted. Stephen, what is John's pick of the week?
John, I believe that I can never understand him on the phone, is taking the over in the Seattle-Dallas match.
What in tarnation, son? You can't understand me. You're the one wearing the plaid skirt to rugby games. Give me them Seawolves and Jackals with the over at 53 points. Yeehaw! Okay, well, I'm going to stay in the Pacific Northwest.
My pick is Seattle at Starfire over Dallas with that -4.5. And on that note, we're out of time. I want to thank John Bradshaw Layfield for not being here so that Proxy Steve Lewis could be here. King Gift Egbelu, the inventor of words, and twins George Hook, the Irish rugby legend, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other shows, including MLR Weekly. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, sign up for our weekly newsletter, and please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.